Welcome to This Explainer. Today, we're going to unpack an unforgettable story by asking you to imagine something entirely impossible. Just imagine, for a second, falling head over heels for someone who, well, disappears, literally without warning. Someone who can actually travel through time, but has absolutely zero control over where or when he goes.
So, would you love someone who could just vanish on you? Let's explore how this impossible premise forces us to confront a really painful reality, that time is something we can never truly control. We're diving into the incredibly high emotional stakes of Audrey Niffenegger's heartbreaking novel, The Time Traveler's Wife. And trust me, this isn't just a story about time travel. It's a profoundly deep look at destiny and human loneliness. All right, let's jump straight into Section 1, A Love Out of Time. At first glance, Henry and Clare Abshire might seem like your perfectly ordinary, everyday couple. But Henry suffers from a terrifying reality, a rare condition called involuntary genetic time travel. And involuntary is absolutely the key word here, guys. He cannot control when it happens, and he sure can't control where he ends up. One second, he's just hanging out in the present, and the next, he's violently pulled back into his own childhood or dropped into some dangerous moment in the future. And every single time this happens, he arrives totally vulnerable. No clothes, no money, and absolutely zero protection.
Think about your own relationships for a second. Think about the stark contrast between an ordinary life and what Henry and Clare have to endure. Usually, you make dinner plans. You expect your partner to actually be there, right? But for Clare, her reality involves waking up in the middle of the night, only to find her partner has completely vanished into another year entirely. His life is totally chaotic and terrifying, and her life, well, it's defined by these sudden, inexplicable absences. And this unpredictable vanishing creates arguably the wildest chronological paradox you could ever imagine for a romance. See, for Clare, Henry has literally always been around. She first met an older version of him when she was just a 6-year-old kid in the meadow behind her house. Over the years, he kept popping in to visit, and she actually fell in love with him long before their relationship officially even started. But for Henry, it's a whole different story. When adult Henry finally meets adult Clare in the present timeline, he has absolutely never seen her before in his life. They are experiencing the exact same love story, just in a completely different order.
Which brings us to Section 2, Fighting Against the Clock. As they finally become adults together in Chicago, with Henry working as a librarian and Clare working as an artist, we see them fiercely fighting to build a real, grounded relationship. But because Henry is constantly jumping into these highly dangerous situations, like freezing winters or violent street encounters, he starts learning some terrible truths about their own timeline. And this forces them, and honestly us as the audience, to grapple with a massive question. Can the future be changed, or is everything already predetermined? Because no matter what Henry tries to do with the foreknowledge he gets from his jumps, time always feels completely impossible to escape. They're basically trapped by the suffocating nature of fate.
Yet through all of this chaos, they actively choose each other. They get married. But marriage brings some really devastating challenges for them. Because his condition is genetic, many of Clare's pregnancies end in tragic miscarriages when the unborn children uncontrollably time travel in the womb. It's heartbreaking, and it pushes them to their absolute emotional limits. But they keep fighting for hope, and eventually, they do have a daughter named Alba. And Alba, unlike Henry, can actually control her abilities, which finally offers their family a brief, beautiful glimpse of peace.
Moving into Section 3 now, The Painful Truth of Destiny. Now, that brief peace they found, it's painfully fragile. Deep down, Henry has seen flashes of his own timeline during his jumps, so he knows for a fact that something terrible is coming. He knows he simply might not live long enough to stay with Clare forever. The sheer physical and emotional trauma of his condition takes an unbelievable toll on him. Surviving sub-zero temperatures naked, navigating dangerous situations totally alone, and just constantly being violently ripped from his own timeline, it entirely wears him down over the years. His body literally becomes exhausted by the relentless displacement of it all. And then, the emotional hammer drops. The very moment Henry always feared finally happens. During one last, totally unexpected time jump into a highly dangerous situation, Henry is tragically shot. He manages to briefly pull himself back home to the present, but his injuries are fatal and he dies right there in Clare's arms. It's a gut punch that forces us to confront a really harsh reality about their story. Their physical time together was always strictly, painfully temporary. But, the story doesn't just end in pure despair. Because of the weird, non-linear nature of his condition, traces of a younger Henry from the past still occasionally drop in to visit a grieving, much older Clare in her future. These fleeting moments are incredibly powerful. They beautifully suggest that while their physical time was cut short, their complete devotion to one another actually transcends time entirely. Let's zoom out a bit for section 4, meaning beyond the metaphor. So why does the specific story resonate so deeply? Why is it a global phenomenon? Well, it's because it elevates itself way past being just a clever sci-fi concept into a universally resonant human story. Beneath all the flashy time travel mechanics, we find deeply human realities. We're talking about love, sacrifice, the agonizing wait for someone you love to return, and that universal fear of losing them. The joy, the jealousy, the absolute devotion. It all feels incredibly authentic, because the story sets aside the usual sci-fi tropes to focus purely on the emotional fallout of these experiences. Actually, the time travel isn't really just a clever plot device. It acts as a direct, almost painful metaphor for real-world relationships. Think about it. In real life, partners sometimes just emotionally disappear. Sometimes life throws totally unexpected challenges at us that pull couples apart. And ultimately, no matter how much we fiercely love someone, the forward march of time is unstoppable. We are all eventually going to run out of time with the people we love. Which brings us right down to the ultimate core of this explainer. I want to leave you with this final provocative thought. If you knew the end of the story, if you knew for an absolute fact that heartbreak and loss were inevitable, would you still choose love? The tragic, incredibly fragile beauty of Henry and Claire's connection argues that yes, even temporary love can change your life forever. Thank you so much for joining me for this explainer, and keep exploring the incredible meanings hidden within these timeless stories.